Hi, I'm Kelsa from Rewild in the Womb, and this video is about the connection between our menstrual cycle and our creativity and our sexuality. I'll be mainly focusing on creativity and this life force, but it can also express through our sexuality. So, this topic was inspired by a question that came out in my Rewild in the Room Facebook group, which is a space where women can share about their experiences with the menstrual cycle and learn more about menstrual cycle awareness. And I think it's a fascinating topic that so much light can be shed on these areas of our lives by really working consciously with our menstrual cycle. Because basically our menstrual cycle is a microcosm of the larger cycles in our lives, and we can see those reflected each month as we go through the 28 or thereabouts day cycle. And it obviously varies from woman to woman how long that is. Yours might be 32 days or it might be 26 days. But overall, there is like this archetypal map and pattern that we can look to find more insight and clarity into our lives. So we naturally cycle each month from a period of going inwards to connect more deeply with ourselves, to a phase of being more outward, more productive, more creative in the world and producing results in the world. It's like we take what we've discovered in this inner part of the cycle, and then bring it out to share with everyone. And then we return back inwards again to compost all that we've experienced in the last weeks, to really come home to ourselves and integrate what's happened in our creative process and in our lives, in our relationships, and to again find our medicine, our insights, and the next steps forward in our lives. And there's a perfect alchemy and magic to this process. Every month we also journey through 4 inner seasons. So within these 2 general currents of inward and outward, we have 4 inner seasons, which I'll explore much more deeply in the upcoming Rewild Your Womb online course beginning in mid-September. So if you're interested to find out about that, please head over to my website, rewildinthewomb.org, or check out my Facebook page, also called Rewild in the Womb, where we move from this winter phase of our menstruation time, which is very much the incubation phase of going inward and resting and recharging. Ideally, I mean, it's like in the busy lives we lead, we often don't access the full power of this, but it's something that the more we can lean into, the more we can find the real jewels within. We can find the energy to then take outwards into the next phase, which is spring, when we come alive again and we start to be curious again about the outside world. And this is our pre-ovulation phase, where we're kind of gearing back up into this more expansive turn of the tide. And it's an experimental time. It's a time of playing and seeing what we want to explore. What is it that's calling us? What's exciting us? What's motivating us? But it's not a time yet to push. It's not a time to go full tilt and full energy. It's very much a gentle time of coming. If you imagine the blooms of flowers coming out in early spring, they're still quite sensitive and delicate, and it's not a time where they're yet at their full bloom. And we can't force that any earlier than it happens, right? It's summer comes when it comes, and when it does come, this is our ovulation time, and we can really open into our expansion of our full self and show ourselves to the world, celebrate who we are, really go for it with our projects and our to-do lists and our family life and our relationships, and enjoy. And there can be a lot of pleasure in this time, as well as a lot of achievement on the outward level. And then we come back into the autumn phase, the pre-menstruum, which often has a really bad rap, but is actually potentially a very beautiful time of coming back into this relationship with yourself and seeing, what is it that works for me in my life and what doesn't work? What is it that I want to change? And this can feel pretty uncomfortable and challenging, confronting, but ultimately it leads us back to the temple, back to winter, back to this recharging time. So this cycle keeps coming round every single month, and we have an opportunity each time to deepen our wisdom, deepen our connection to ourselves, So that's the menstrual cycle. And I have another video where I talk more about the sacredness of menstruation. This is on my Facebook page, and how to really harness the benefits of the menstruation time in particular. But now just to speak to this connection between the menstrual cycle and our sexuality. So our sexuality and creativity too have their times of being more dormant and active within us. And there's, again, a perfect symmetry to this, but it's not a linear, uniform process. It looks different for each woman, and each woman will have her own spin on this archetypal map of the 4 seasons. So a classic pattern would be that during ovulation, during summer, this is the time of the most heightened sexual energy. But for some women, they have a big surge of sexual energy just before they bleed. And my teacher, Alexandra Pope, who's a pioneer in this field of menstruality, writes very beautifully and talks very beautifully about something called the void. In the Red School, we call it the void, and it's this time, a few hours or a few days before the bleed actually starts, before we hit that menstruation point, in which we feel at our most vulnerable, our most open. The ground beneath us can feel very unsteady, and you might recognize this in yourself. It's a time where you just can feel a bit lost. And yet, in this time, there's also such an openness to intimacy, and there can be some really beautiful sexuality from this place and connection with one's partner from this place, if you know the potential of it and if you're able to invite each other into that. So there can be some beautiful closeness at this time. And I've even heard of a voracious sexual appetite emerging during the autumn time, the premenstruum. And for some women, this can be related to the fact that they're more relaxed during this time. Their fertile time has passed, so they don't have to worry about pregnancy prevention if they are not wanting to conceive. And this can be opening up a whole new level of surrender. For others, there can also be a physical correlation in that our estrogen drops at this time of the month during the premenstruum, and this then causes a different balance to the hormone of testosterone, which women have too, active throughout their cycle in varying degrees, and is related to sex drive. So this can be suddenly a resurgence of energy at this time. So, but basically we're all so individual, so it's really just an invitation to be curious about this. How does this show up for you? When are your more sexually driven times? When are the times that you may want sex, but you want it in a more kind of gentle way, or a more romantic or intimate way, and when are the times where it's more wild and more expressive, so just something to investigate, the different times of your cycle. So to talk about creativity, through working with our cycle in general, through menstrual cycle awareness, we can come to a much deeper understanding of our calling in life, our creative potential, what it is that we have the potential to manifest in this world that is really unique to us. And by working with a cycle, we can more easily manifest it and actually see it coming out in a more effortless way without pushing and striving. Because the pushing and striving comes when we're working against our energy, when we're trying to make things happen at times of our cycle when actually it's not the right time. So by tuning into where we are in our cycle and receiving the clues that we get from daily tracking of our menstrual cycle, which I will cover in the online course as well, we can come in contact with our strengths and vulnerabilities within the creative process. Where is it easy for us? Where are the sticking points? Where do we need more support? And by tuning into where we are in the larger creative cycle of our lives, we can then know where we need to cut ourselves slack, where we need to focus and channel our energies more effectively, and when it's the best time to do that, and when it's time to just step back and get a different perspective on what we're working on. Within a larger creative project that we're involved in, we can harness the different energies of our cycle, the cyclical seasons that I've talked about, to engage with different elements of the project. So, for example, I'm currently working on my second book, and what I tend to do is during the spring phase of my cycle, pre-ovulation, I will write fresh sections of the book. I will rewrite sections and just come with this kind of beginner's mind of, starting again and seeing what wants to come in an experimental, open way. And because this is working in harmony with the experimental and risk-taking energies of this time. And then when it comes to summer, ovulation time, and I have a more kind of getting on with it mentality, a more productive orientation, I will then just get on with it basically and really give myself time to work on the book in a focused way. And I find I can just get into flow with it. And then in autumn, my premenstrual time, which is a natural discernment phase, a time when we can really look at our work and see what we need to change about it, what needs to go, what needs to stay. And the critical faculties are higher, so that is the time when I edit most effectively. I find that if I edit during this time, I'll see things that I won't see in spring and summer, for example. And in winter, I let it drift. I drop it. I allow inspiration to come, but I don't expect anything of myself in terms of actually driving this forward. I just remain available to my muse. I let my notebook be there so that random moments I can jot down what comes. So our 4 creative phases in life actually correspond very neatly to the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, and this will be explored in more depth in the online course as well. We'll have a whole week devoted to this, where in the first phase it's an initiation phase. This is about the ideas. It's about really just opening up to those first seeds of what wants to come, exploring, playing, experimenting, and finding a balance between freedom and containment and focus. It's not a time to expose your ideas too early. Just as in spring, in our menstrual cycle, it's best not to go out there and launch a whole new thing that's very vulnerable, because we're very sensitive to criticism at this time. And same thing with this part of the creative cycle. We are more likely to have our budding flowers be wilted or frozen by criticism. So it's really important to nurture those buds and protect them, and only expose the work to people that you really know and trust, that will give you that little, just that encouragement, and to ask for that, to be like, hey, I just need some encouraging words at this stage, not strong feedback, but at some point during this phase of spring in your creative cycle, it is time to commit and say yes, and really allow life to start to support you with this project. Then in the next phase, we move into manifestation, and this is where you can come more public with your creative endeavors. You can start to share it with the world, and to just go for it, to just do it, to enter into a more practical phase where flow can happen. It's like the project just takes on its own momentum, and this can be actually quite relaxing if we cooperate with the energies of this phase. Then we come into discernment. So like autumn, our critical faculties are higher. We're able to see cut the wheat from the chaff, like basically putting that critical eye onto your project, and also exposing it to the critical eye of others. This is an excellent time to get feedback. And you know that you've entered this phase where you start to naturally feel more critical of your work, and you start to naturally feel more open to that feedback. And it's a time of cleaning up, polishing, pruning, and it can be pretty tough for the ego, because it's difficult to face what is not working about what you're doing. It's difficult to not just give up on the whole project entirely, or to lose faith in yourself, but really the key of this time is to hold that tension, to keep looking at it while not letting your inner critic run rampant, to just endure the imperfection of what you're creating, because the vision that you've had that you've brought into action in the initiation phase is always going to change course and change form as you go along. It's by the time you get to the discernment phase, it's going to look very different. So don't let your inner critic go wild. Be gentle with yourself. And then there's a time to walk away temporarily, to just drop it, to let it go. And this is the potentizing phase of creativity, where you make the power that's in your creative project more palpable, more available. You make it more powerful. And this is a time to go deeper into what your creative endeavor really means for you. What is the purpose of it in the world? What is the purpose of it in your whole vision for your life? How can you find more fresh inspiration for the next cycle? Because we go through this whole creative cycle several times with each project. But it's like, first you have to let go, and first you have to walk away. And that could mean taking a break of a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, even months sometimes, when it's a really big creative phase of your life. It can feel like nothing's moving at this time. It can feel like you're almost stuck. You might want to give up even. But really it's about moving from making things happen to into a receiving mode, where you create space for something new to come in, you let your muse speak to you, and you let your creative project talk to you and see where it wants to go. It's really normal to feel empty at this time, just as we can feel in our menstruation time, really just emptying out. And it's only in creating that vacuum, that void, that abyss, that something new can come to rise. And also at this time, we let our inner cup fill up, and we might be quite exhausted by this point of the creative process. It's like, enough, I can't do anymore, I'm exhausted. So that's the time to rest and recharge. So in the e-course, we'll also be looking at the shadows of these different phases of creativity and how they relate to the shadows of the menstrual cycle seasons, how to work with them, and how to catalyze our inner critic and our inner wisdom keeper. I mean, the inner critic's already there, but it's a matter of how to work with it constructively so that it doesn't destroy us, that it doesn't stop us putting our projects out in the world, and balancing it with our inner wisdom keeper, who is like cheering us on and reminding us how valuable our work is, how much it's needed in the world, how much our unique voice is precious. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's given you some beginning points for investigation into your own life. And I just want to acknowledge my teachers, Alexandra Pope and Shani Wurlitzer, who I trained with in the Red School and who have pioneered this work. Beautiful, beautiful work. Their book, Wild Power, is an excellent introduction to these topics. And I invite you warmly to check out my website, rewildinthewomb.org. I work one-to-one as well as in groups, and can offer you sessions over a period of time or just a one-off session to uncover the medicine of your unique menstrual cycle and heal any imbalances that might be going on with that and with your creative process, using your menstrual cycle as a tool to work with your creative process. And the enrollment is already open for the inner seasons work and all the other aspects that we'll be looking deeply with in the 4-week online course that starts mid-September. You can already put a deposit down and secure your place in this intimate small group, where we'll be journeying with weekly Zoom calls, a closed Facebook group, a secret Facebook group to share support, and weekly exercises to do at home. And I'll be offering daily support as well on that course for all of you who take part. So check it out on rewildinthewomb.org. Thank you for watching. Please share this video if you enjoyed it, and have lots more videos coming with more exciting topics on how to harness the power of this cycle in our lives and really start to wake up to ourselves as women and what that really means in our creativity, in our relationships, and the whole of our lives. So thank you for watching. Bye for now.